Amanda had nothing left except her job at the dry cleaning shop. Since her parents died in a tragic auto accident, her world had crumbled overnight. Her uncle, who was supposed to take care of her, instead took over everything they owned, the house, the land, and the little savings her parents had left behind. Without an ounce of pity, he chased her out, leaving her to fend for herself on the unforgiving streets. She had no home, no family, and no one to turn to. Life had forced her to grow up quickly, teaching her how to survive in the harshest ways. She was fortunate that the dry cleaning shop owner had taken pity on her. He saw her desperation and decided to help. Not only did he offer her a job, but he also allowed her to sleep in the back of the shop after working hours. The space was small, just a cramped storage area with barely enough room to stretch out on the cold, hard floor. Still, it was better than sleeping outside in the cold, exposed to danger. Determined not to lose the little she had left, Amanda worked tirelessly. She woke up early, stayed late, and made sure the shop ran smoothly. She never complained, never slacked, always pushing herself forward. One fateful afternoon, everything changed. Miss Agatha, the wealthy and arrogant fiancée of a prominent businessman, Mr. John, strutted into the dry cleaning shop to collect clothes for herself and her fiancé. Dressed in expensive heels and dripping with jewelry, she barely acknowledged Amanda, treating her like she was invisible. Amanda, as always, handled the clothes with care, ensuring each piece was properly folded and ready for pickup. But as she reached for one of Agatha's expensive designer dresses, her fingers accidentally brushed against the delicate fabric, leaving behind a faint smudge. Agatha's eyes flared with anger. Her lips curled in disgust as she snatched the dress from Amanda's hands. "You stupid girl. Do you have any idea how much this dress costs? You've ruined it," she shrieked, her voice sharp enough to cut through the air. Amanda's heart pounded. She opened her mouth to explain, but Agatha wasn't listening. Amanda fell to her knees, desperation tightening her throat. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to." "Save your pathetic excuses," Agatha snapped, her face twisted in fury. She turned sharply to the shop owner, her perfectly manicured fingers pointing at Amanda like she was dirt beneath her feet. "Fire her. Now." The shop owner hesitated, glancing at Amanda, who was trembling. "Miss Agatha, Amanda is my best worker. She's hardworking, dedicated. It was just an accident, and I don't care." Agatha interrupted, her voice cutting through the air like a whip. "If she's still here the next time I come, I will take my business elsewhere. And trust me, your little shop won't survive without me." Amanda's breath hitched. She could see the conflict in the shop owner's eyes. But deep down, she already knew, her fate was sealed. The shop owner sighed heavily, his shoulders sagging with defeat. "Amanda, I'm sorry, but you have to go." His voice was filled with regret, but Amanda knew his hands were tied. Tears welled up in her eyes as she clutched at his arm. "Please, sir, I'll do anything. I can work for free until I pay for the damage. Just don't send me away." But it was useless. Agatha stood smugly with her arms crossed, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. She had won. Amanda swallowed the lump in her throat as she gathered her few belongings, a tattered bag with 2 dresses and an old scarf. With one last glance at the shop, she walked out, her heart heavy with despair. She wandered the streets, exhausted and hopeless. As night fell, the cold air bit into her skin, and hunger gnawed at her stomach. She had nowhere to go. Stumbling upon an uncompleted building, she hesitated. The place was dark, abandoned, and eerie, but it was shelter. She stepped inside, curling up in a corner, her arms wrapped around herself for warmth. As the night stretched on, she whispered a silent prayer, hoping morning would come quickly. The next morning, Amanda woke up to the sound of deep voices and heavy footsteps. Blinking against the morning light, she sat up quickly, her heart racing. A group of construction workers had arrived, along with their engineer, inspecting the site and preparing for the day's work. Fear gripped her. What if they chased her away? She had nowhere else to go. Summoning courage, she stepped forward and approached one of the workers. "Please, sir," she said, her voice shaking. I just need a job. Anything. I'll do whatever it takes. The worker glanced at her, then pointed toward the engineer. Amanda hurried over, repeating her plea. The engineer frowned, looking her up and down. This is hard labor, young lady. Carrying cement, sand, and blocks, it's not a job for women. Amanda straightened her shoulders. I can do it, she said firmly. The engineer raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. Are you sure? It's tough work. Not many women last here. I don't care, she insisted. Just give me a chance. The engineer sighed, studying the determination in her eyes. Finally, he nodded. Fine. But if you can't handle it, you leave. Amanda swallowed hard. This was her only chance. She started working, determined to prove herself. The weight of the cement bag strained her muscles, and the scorching sun beat down on her relentlessly. Her hands blistered, her back ached, and sweat drenched her clothes, but she refused to stop. Each time her body screamed for rest, she pushed through, lifting, carrying, and enduring the grueling labor. By the end of the day, her legs felt like lead, and every inch of her body throbbed with pain. Yet, she stood tall, refusing to show weakness. The engineer watched her with quiet admiration. The next morning, as the workers gathered, he approached her, holding out a pair of safety boots and a work vest. You've earned this, he said, his voice firm yet approving. Amanda's tired eyes widened. For the first time in days, a genuine smile broke across her face. Maybe, just maybe, things were finally changing. Days passed, and Amanda grew stronger. The pain in her muscles became more bearable, and she adapted to the demanding work. She learned how to mix cement, carry bricks efficiently, and move heavy loads without wasting energy. Though the job was grueling, she found a sense of purpose in it. But fate wasn't done testing her. One afternoon, the owner of the construction site arrived for an inspection, Mr. John himself. He was a well-dressed man in his early 40s, exuding authority as he walked through the site, nodding at the workers. Then his gaze landed on Amanda. He stopped, frowning. A woman? Doing such backbreaking work? Who let her work here? He asked the engineer. She insisted, the engineer explained. And she's hardworking. She's earned her place. Mr. John shook his head. This job is too harsh for her. She has to stop. Amanda's heart dropped. Please, sir, I can handle it, she pleaded. I need this job. But Mr. John was firm. This isn't a place for you. He pulled out some cash, handing her a week's pay up front. Take this and go. Tears stung Amanda's eyes. Defeated, she gathered her few belongings and walked away, her future once again uncertain. That evening, Mr. John stopped by the dry cleaning shop to pick up his clothes. As the owner handed him his neatly pressed suits, he glanced around, noticing the absence of a familiar face. Where's the young woman who used to work here? He asked casually. The shop owner hesitated before sighing. She was fired, he admitted. Mr. John frowned, confusion clouding his face. Fired? Why? He asked, his voice thick with concern. The shop owner shifted uncomfortably, clearly reluctant to share the truth. Your fiancé insisted. She got upset over a small stain on her dress and demanded I let Amanda go, he explained, avoiding John's gaze. Mr. John was taken aback, his surprise turning to frustration. You fired her over that? He asked incredulously. The owner sighed deeply, regret in his eyes. I had no choice. Agatha threatened to take her business elsewhere, and I couldn't afford to lose her as a customer. Mr. John's expression darkened. He hadn't known Agatha could be so cruel. Guilt gnawed at Mr. John as he drove home. The more he thought about it, the worse he felt. Had he unknowingly ruined Amanda's life twice? First, by allowing Agatha to have her fired from the dry cleaning shop, and then by dismissing her from the construction site? A memory surfaced, the determined girl at the construction site, pushing through exhaustion. Could it really be the same Amanda? Without a second thought, he turned his car around and drove through the city streets, scanning every corner. After nearly an hour of searching, he finally spotted her sitting alone on a street corner, knees drawn to her chest, staring at the ground. He pulled over and rolled down the window. Get in. Amanda looked up, startled. She hesitated. "I owe you an apology," he said, his voice sincere. "I never should have let you go." Amanda studied his face for a moment before cautiously getting into the car. He drove in silence for a while before speaking. "I have a job for you at my house," he said finally. "You won't have to suffer anymore." Amanda blinked in surprise. A job? After everything? She wasn't sure if she could trust him, but what other choice did she have? The moment they arrived at the house, Agatha exploded. Her eyes widened in disbelief as she pointed an accusatory finger at Amanda. "Why is she here?" Agatha demanded, her voice sharp with anger. John sighed, already knowing this would happen. "She'll work here as our maid," he replied firmly, trying to calm the situation. Agatha's nostrils flared, and she shot a glare at Amanda. "This house is not for people like you." From that moment on, Amanda's life turned into a nightmare. Agatha made sure of it, giving her impossible tasks that were designed to break her spirit. She instructed Amanda to scrub the floors, only to deliberately spill juice afterward and make her clean again. Agatha would send Amanda to rooms that were already spotless, forcing her to waste time. At meal times, she would deny Amanda food, mocking her hunger. Agatha would hurl insults at Amanda, making her feel worthless and belittled. Yet, through it all, Amanda remained silent, her resolve only growing stronger with each cruel act. One day, John, trying to make amends, bought new clothes for both Amanda and Agatha. Amanda was overjoyed and filled with gratitude, her heart swelling with hope that things might be improving. She eagerly tried on the clothes, feeling a sense of dignity she hadn't known in a long time. But Agatha's reaction was nothing short of venomous. Her face twisted with jealousy as she glared at Amanda, her eyes burning with resentment. That night, in the dark of the backyard, Agatha gathered Amanda's new clothes and set them on fire. "You think you're special?" Agatha sneered, watching as the flames devoured the fabric. Amanda stood there, her hands trembling at her sides, her heart breaking. She had no words to defend herself, but in her silence, there was strength. Though the fire consumed the clothes, it could never burn away her spirit. She refused to let Agatha's cruelty break her. One night, Agatha stayed out late, returning home drunk and stumbling into the house. Amanda, ever compassionate, rushed to her side and helped her to bed, carefully placing a wet cloth on Agatha's forehead to ease her discomfort. The next morning, Agatha didn't thank Amanda. Instead, she insulted her once again, belittling her for no reason. But John saw something different. He witnessed Amanda's quiet kindness and her unwavering patience despite Agatha's cruelty. He noticed how she never complained, never fought back, even when treated unfairly. Slowly, John began to admire Amanda, not just for her strength, but for the grace she carried through it all. One evening, as John noticed Amanda still wearing her old clothes, he asked gently, "Why don't you ever wear the clothes I bought you?" Amanda hesitated, her eyes lowering in discomfort. The memory of Agatha's cruelty, the burning of the clothes, was still fresh in her mind. She couldn't bear to relive the painful details, especially not with John, who had shown her so much kindness. She smiled weakly, her voice soft. "I'm just not used to such things." Trying to avoid the subject, she quickly changed the topic. John didn't press, but the look in his eyes lingered, sensing there was more. Agatha, however, quickly sensed the growing bond between John and Amanda. Her jealousy festered, turning into a toxic desperation. She could no longer ignore the way John looked at Amanda with growing respect and admiration. Realizing she was losing control, Agatha decided to act quickly. She couldn't let Amanda take what was hers. Agatha began scheming, planning ways to drive a wedge between them, determined to keep John's attention on her, no matter the cost. One afternoon, Agatha called Amanda into the living room with an unexpected expression. She looked sincere, her eyes softer than Amanda had ever seen them. To Amanda's shock, Agatha apologized. "I'm sorry for everything," Agatha said, her voice surprisingly calm. "I've been harsh, and I shouldn't have treated you that way." Amanda's heart swelled with hope. After everything she'd endured, hearing Agatha apologize felt like a breakthrough. She forgave her instantly, eager to believe that things might finally be changing. "Can you make me some noodles?" Agatha asked sweetly, almost too sweetly. Amanda, caught up in the fragile hope of peace, nodded eagerly and quickly prepared the meal. She took care to make it just right, ensuring Agatha would enjoy it. With a small smile, she placed the steaming bowl before Agatha. But as soon as Agatha took a bite, everything turned. She screamed at the top of her lungs, her face contorting in pain and horror. "She poisoned me," Agatha wailed, clutching her throat. John rushed downstairs at the sound of the commotion. Amanda stood frozen, confused and panicked, as Agatha's accusations filled the air. She tried to defend herself, but Agatha's voice grew louder and more insistent, doubling down on the false claim. John's face darkened with suspicion. His gaze moved from Agatha to Amanda, and then he spoke sharply, his voice cold. "Amanda, eat the food." Without hesitation, Amanda obeyed, taking a bite from the bowl. But as soon as she swallowed, her eyes widened, and a sharp pain twisted in her stomach. She gasped, clutching her belly as she collapsed to the floor. John's eyes widened in horror. He rushed to her side, scooping her up and racing to the car, praying he wasn't too late. Hours later, Amanda slowly regained consciousness in the hospital bed. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered weakly, "I didn't poison the food. I swear I didn't." Her voice trembled with a mix of fear and relief. John, who had been by her side the entire time, held her hand tightly and nodded, his expression filled with understanding. He believed her, he always had. When they finally returned home, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Agatha was waiting in the living room, a smug smile on her face, expecting Amanda to be fired and sent away. But what she didn't anticipate was John's response. He stood tall, his eyes cold and unwavering. "Agatha, pack your things," John said firmly, his voice carrying a weight of finality. "Leave." Agatha's face drained of color as her eyes widened in disbelief. "What? No, you can't." "I can," John interrupted, his tone hardening. He pulled out his phone, showing her footage from the hidden CCTV cameras he had installed throughout the house. The recordings revealed Agatha's manipulative actions, how she had deliberately set up Amanda to take the fall. Agatha's world came crashing down as the truth became undeniable. She fell to her knees, begging John for forgiveness, her voice quivering with desperation. "Please, John, I didn't mean it. I'm sorry. I'll change," she cried. But John stood resolute, his face cold, his heart hardened by her lies. He shook his head. "It's over, Agatha. You've shown your true colors." Despite her pleading, he turned his back and walked away, leaving Agatha alone, humiliated, and broken. She had lost everything, her place in the house, her future with John, and her reputation. Her cruel intentions had led to her downfall. Days later, John surprised Amanda with a proposal. They had been through so much together. She had endured hardship, humiliation, and the cruelty of Agatha, yet through it all, her heart had remained pure. Her kindness and patience had triumphed over the darkness that had surrounded her. John, seeing the strength she had shown, knew she was the one for him. With a soft smile and a glint of hope in his eyes, he took her hand and asked the life-changing question, "Amanda, will you marry me?" Amanda's heart swelled with emotion. She had never imagined that, after all the pain and struggles, she would find happiness. Tears of joy welled up in her eyes as she gazed at him, unable to speak at first. The love she had fought for was finally hers. "Yes," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. John embraced her, and in that moment, Amanda knew that everything she had gone through had led to this beautiful moment of redemption. She had lost everything but gained so much more, true love and a future with a man who saw her worth. For the first time in a long time, Amanda had a home, not just in a house, but in John's heart. Thank you for watching. Kindly support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing to our channel Chukwudi Alola Studio.
Like and subscribe.